Hello everyone, my name is Lowko and welcome to a new game of StarCraft II Heart of the Swarm. Today, we're actually going to take a look at a game that I played a few days back, and it's going to be a Zerg vs Zerg on the map. On the map, what is this map called again? Battleship Vestige, there we go. And as you can see, I'm spotting in the top left corner as the green Zerg. And this was actually played as a ladder game, so it's not anything fancy, nothing too special or whatever, but it was a really fun game to play. And I figured, you know, I should probably share this with other people because this was a really awesome game. So let's just jump straight into it. As you can see, Zerg vs Zerg, as you might know actually, Zerg vs Zerg is kind of awkward right now in the way that for the longest time in Heart of the Swarm, Zerg vs Zerg was pretty much all about the Mutalisk and more Mutalisk and a third base and then more Mutalisk, and sometimes there was like a Zergling all in, and that stuff is pretty much still going on. But a few weeks back, as you can see in the patch notes video that I made, Blizzard actually buffed the Spore Crawler to do more biological damage. And basically what happened is that at that point, the entire Zerg vs Zerg matchup changed quite a bit. And as you can see in the production tab, by the way, my opponent is already going for a really early spawning pool, where my spawning pool is not up just yet. But before the Zerglings get to my base, let's talk a little bit more about the Zerg vs Zerg matchup. Like I mentioned, Zerg vs Zerg used to be all about the Mutalisk, but the little tiny change of the Spore Crawler buff kind of changed the entire matchup around to be a lot more Roach heavy. Zergling pushes are a lot more variable, and obviously the counter to the Zergling pushes are going to be Banelings and Roaches, and then the third base becomes insanely important, and people actually start droning up the third base, whereas before they usually didn't get the third base for the minerals, but only for the gas. And you know, it's a whole lot more it's specific right now, and it's a whole lot more fun. However, it is really hard to figure out exactly what is a good build order currently in ZvZ rather. Now you could see me opening up right there with a spawning pool followed up by a hatchery, whereas my opponent, as I can see right now, Zerglings are moving out. So I decide, at least I should be, if I'm not mistaken, I should be deciding to call for the hatchery. There we go, I do decide to call for the hatchery because I currently do not know if my opponent is going for an all-in or not. Obviously, he can go for a 10 pool and then go back into droning. He can go for a 10 pool with an expansion. But he could also go in a 10 pool with speedlings and banelings, or banelings and just speedlings, or whatever, you know. It's kind of hard to decide exactly what your opponent is up to. So what I'm going to do is maybe a little bit of an over preparation. But here we go, he's going to be engaging in my Zerg. Now, I do have my personal Zerglings out already. I didn't open up with a hatchery first, which actually would have given him the win, but it looks like my Zerglings are kind of fine for now. But since I don't really know what he's up to, and since I don't see a hatchery going down for him just yet, I am not completely certain if I'm safe. So what I decided to do is actually get a second queen right away, let my spine crawler finish, and now try and sneak out a few drones again. There might be that he's going for this Zergling into Baneling all in, and that might be a little bit of a problem, but at this point, looks like he's not adding any more Zerglings. I'm actually taking a look at the minimap right now, pretty much all the time, to see if any Zerglings are trying to sneak by my Overlord, but it looks to be fairly safe right now. I don't think he's going for too much aggression anymore, so I do decide to actually throw down my hatchery relatively early. I'm using my queens, obviously, for defense, as well as my spine crawler for defense, so far, it's looking relatively good. Let's have a look at the income tab, and it actually turns out that he is slightly ahead of it, but obviously, he invested quite a lot in the early part of the game, so it is relatively even. As you can see in the supply counts, they are pretty even. He's slightly ahead, but it should not be anything major at all. Now, as you can see on the minimap, his opponent is, or my opponent rather, is going for a hatchery of his own right now, so I do recognize, okay, he's probably going to be playing fairly economically right now, so I'm going to be allowed to pretty much drone up as hard as I possibly can. Now, this was like the little early part of the game, I guess you could call it. In the early part of the game, in Zerg vs Zerg, there's a whole lot of 10 pools going on, and most of the time, if you manage to micro and you play very safely, you will pretty much always be able to counter 10 pools or any earlier pools by going for a 15 pool yourself, just with some Zergling micro, with some drone micro, and if necessary with a spine crawler and queens. However, after holding that and you recognize your opponent is going to be playing fairly safe as well, you will either need to start making a lot of aggression, but hold that thought because my opponent is actually having a lot of banelings and speedlings in my main base. Now, as you can see, my own Zergling speed is finishing up as well. I'm going to be trying to split all my baneling, or all my drones rather, because I don't want to get hit by the banelings, and here we go. He's going to try and do as much damage as he possibly can, but my drones are relatively well spread out. And how many drones did he end up killing right there? he ended up killing absolutely 0 drones right there. So that was quite a little bit of defense for me. I do decide to actually follow this up with more and more Zerglings, because what I was about to mention before those Banelings come in is that you have the choice to either play super defensive or to simply go for a little bit of push. Now, he recognizes that he did not do nearly enough damage at all, so I also recognize this, so I decided to spend my minerals and spend my gas on doing a little bit of economical, or a little bit of a push, trying to do a little bit of economical damage. And behind this, as you can see on the production tab, I'm going to be following it up with more drones. Now, he is going to be trying to push in with Banelings as well, so I will need to try and not lose all of my personal Banelings. But here we go, he's going to be pushing in with a whole lot of Banelings, going to try and make my Banelings, my personal Banelings, connect with his, and there we go, big detonation going off in his Baneling line, and I'm going to try and do as much eco damage as I possibly can right here. Going to put my Zerglings on hold position, trying to sneak out of the way, out of those Banelings, but not the best micro right there by me. And let's have a look at how many workers I did manage to kill. Only 1 worker kill for me going down right now, but I did manage to do quite a little bit of droning up while doing this little bit of a push, and as you can see, I am slightly ahead in the worker count. Now, since I recognize my opponent is not really tacking up too much either, it is probably going to be a very safe bet to go for Roaches myself. He's not gonna try and go for a quick Spire play, at least I don't think so. It's highly uncommon to do that as a follow-up to this. So here we go, he's going to use the Zerglings that he still had left to try a little bit of a counter attack, but I do manage to get quite a bunch of nice connections right there, using my queens on hold position to try and plug all the walls, or like all the holes in my wall, but it looks like relatively defensive play right now for me. Everything is looking quite fine, so I don't think I need to worry too much. Now, I'm going to be making a few Roaches to make sure that I will have a full wall. If he decides to go for more and more Zerglings, I will be able to put my Roaches on hold position in the wall at the front of my base, so that way I will be able to play very defensive, and I will be able to stop most of his Zergling counterattacks with my Roaches and with my Spike Claw. Now, at this point, I want to be droning up as hard as I possibly can. I want to make sure that my opponent is doing kind of the same, so I'm trying to use my Zerglings to scout what is going on, and I recognize, oh my god, he's actually going to make more and more drones. Now, as you can see, I am sneaking 2 Zerglings to the top of his main base right now, and I hope that he did not see that. I am morphing 2 Banelings up there just in trying to make those run into his mineral line and therefore get a huge advantage. Obviously, I don't know if he's aware of those, but it looks like he still did not snipe them off. So here we go, I'm going to be trying to sneak in my Banelings into his mineral line while microing, obviously, but here we go. Pretty horrible detonation going off right away as he noticed that I was pushing right there. He pulled his drones ASAP, and it did end up not doing too much damage. Let's have a look at the worker kill tab. I did kill only 5 workers in total, and the supplies are still completely even. Now, he is going to be moving out with a few Banelings of his own, and I do recognize there is no third base just yet from my opponent, so I'm going to have to defend once again, because if he is going to not have a third base, he probably will have a lot of units out. Considering I did a little bit of economical damage as well, the big chance is that he is going to go and try for a push. Now, what I'm looking for right now is mostly the third base. I really want to know when he's taking his, and I do notice with my Overlord placement that he is moving back. He is also taking a third base right now, so I will also need to take my own third base relatively early on as well. Now, Zerg versus Zerg in the middle part of the game, when it becomes Roaches versus Roaches versus Roaches versus Roaches, the upgrades are what matter most of the time. Obviously, you will need a lot of Roaches, but if your income is relatively the same and you have a similar count of Roaches, the upgrades are going to be absolutely crucial. So let's have a look at my Roaches currently. I am currently at +0 armor and +1 attack, which is, you know, not the best of things. Let's have a look quickly at his Roaches. He is currently at +0, but as you can see, I'm upgrading with only 1 Evo Chamber, whereas my opponent is upgrading with double Evolution Chamber. So I will either need to make something happen, or I will need to decide and do a lot of damage right now, because I don't know I don't know, obviously, that he is going for the double upgrades, but I will know that my +2 is going to finish up in a little bit. Now, I recognize he's going for a third base. I have a full saturation on 2 base, so I do also decide to take my own third base. And at this point, I've been making units non-stop. Now, I want to hit a little bit of a timing attack. I do have an overseer above his army, so I know exactly where he is positioned. And I'm going to try and get him out of position. Going to try and get a huge concave with my roaches and get a snipe on a third base. Now, I know it is already finished, so I will need to sneak in right here. Now, I do have perfect vision on his roach count, and I do manage to get a nice positioning right here at the bottom of his ramp. Going to be spreading out my roaches, trying to make the concave as big as I possibly can. And he recognizes that it is. And I do manage to snipe out the third base. So that gives me a nice little bit of an advantage. Now I'm not going to try and push it too much, because I know that if I manage to get a few drones only at my third base, I will eventually have a bigger economy. And therefore I will have more units up in a little bit. So what I'm going to try and do is make as many units as possible, but sneak in a few roaches every now and then. Now my +2 attack is about to be finishing up, so I know that I will most of the time have an upgrade advantage, so I can stay around a little bit longer, trying to deny his third base. Once again, there you can see his third base is going up, and I'm going to try and sneak around once again, trying to get a cancel on that one. So here we go, I'm going to be target firing it down, but he cancels it just in time, and I managed to delay his third base once again. Now, as you can see, his +1 is finishing up right as we speak, as well as his roach speed. And I am starting my +1 armor right now, so we are relatively even in the armor or in the upgrade count right now. But here we go, I'm going to be trying to engage in. I have +2 finishing up. I had a little bit more income, and I have a huge concave right here, so I do manage to get a lot more service area on his roach. Is going to be trying to inject and make more and more roaches come to the other side of the map, but it looks like I already have the bigger concave. I have a superior upgrade, and I also just have a lot more stuff because of my third base production, and it does look like he slipped a little bit in his economy. So here we go, he's going to GG out of the game. I hope you guys enjoyed this little bit of a back and forth Zerg for the Zerg. Want to thank you guys all for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, hopefully. I will see you in the next episode. Bye! Oh, hey, hello everyone, my name is Lowko, and welcome, or maybe you should call me Simon, maybe I should have said